Okay, hello. You're all very welcome to the session today. And thanks so much again for taking time to come along. Welcome to everyone who's joining us here in Zoom and also to anybody watching on the YouTube channel. So if you're in Zoom and you have any queries, please feel free to put them into the Q&A section. And if you're watching along on YouTube and you have questions, please feel free to put them into the live chat area. So for the session today, what I'm basically hoping to cover is just a real kind of whistle-stop tour of two of the main digital learning tools that we use here in MTU, which is our virtual learning environment, Canvas, and our online lecture delivery tool, Zoom. So for Canvas, I'm going to go through quite a bit of stuff just in terms of what I think are, I suppose, the most important kind of um, tools or tasks or kind of features in Canvas. And by the end of that process, hopefully you should have an understanding of how to access your Canvas modules, how to structure your Canvas modules, how to organize your Canvas modules, publish them, communicate with students, grade assessments, and also where to go to get help. And with Zoom, by the end of the session, I'm hoping that you will have an understanding of how to access Zoom, how to schedule Zoom meetings, and also how to use the Zoom interface to speak to students online. So, as I said, it's kind of something of a whistle-stop tour, but hopefully it is of some use to you in terms of getting up and running with Canvas and Zoom. So the first tool that we'll be looking at is Canvas because it's MTU's virtual learning environment. So the benefit to Canvas really is that all staff and students have access to Canvas. All staff and students are by default enrolled on the relevant modules for Canvas. And Canvas can be used for a lot of different things. I suppose the primary function for Canvas would really be just in terms of sharing resources, making files available to students, receiving assessment files so students can submit assessments to you, and communicating with students. And I suppose one of the major benefits of Canvas as well is over the years we've integrated a lot of different systems into Canvas, including live online lecturing, which is Zoom essentially, the anti-plagiarism solutions, the current one being Turnitin, automated assessments, learning analytics, so on and so forth. And an additional benefit to Canvas is that they provide actually quite good mobile applications for both Android and iOS for staff and students. And we've seen a real growth in the use of students using the Canvas mobile app to keep on top of their studies, access resources, so on and so forth. So this is the digital learning kind of what we'd call the digital learning ecosystem here in MTU Cork. So all these different features and functions relating to communication and collaboration, classroom management, tracking, content, assessment, live classes. You can see all of these are really integrated into Canvas. So Canvas is really basically the hub for all of the different digital learning tools available to you. So without any further ado, the way in which one can access Canvas is via CIT, the URL the URL cit.instructure.com. If you're ever in doubt, you can also go to tel.cit.ie, and there are links up on the Department of TEL website to Canvas and to Zoom. So by clicking on Canvas login here, you will be prompted to log into the system. To access or to log into Canvas, you simply need to use your official MTU email. So, for example, as identified here on the login page, sign in with your MTU staff number, e.g. ms001234 at mtu.ie, and the password for same. So how I always think of this is basically the same username and password that I use to get into my MTU email is what I need to use to log into Canvas. So once you're into the Canvas system, you will land on the dashboard. So the dashboard is where all of the relevant modules for the current semester, but also potentially for past and future semesters, will be displayed. So once you've accessed your dashboard, you can very simply enter into any module you wish to by just clicking on the module in question, and that will bring you into the module space. Now, before we get into the individual modules, maybe just to mention one or two things in terms of what we call the dashboard and kind of the global canvas navigation. So the dashboard is where all of your modules will be presented to you. These are all of the modules that you're enrolled in. And what determines what modules you're enrolled in is MyBand. So the MTU's student and staff management system, MTU students and staff record management system. So it's through MyBand that MTU determines the modules that staff and students should be enrolled in and have access to. When you land on the dashboard, your modules will be displayed under published modules, which is modules which you've published, and unpublished modules, which are not yet published. We'll be getting into the whole notion of publishing modules and content in a bit, but the basic way to look at published modules is that published modules are modules which students can see and can access. Unpublished modules are modules which have not yet been published, so they're invisible to students. So if a student says to you that they are enrolled in your module, but they can't see it in Canvas, 9 times out of 10, it might be because the module just hasn't been published yet. As soon as you publish a module, it'll become visible and available to students. Now, what can happen is if you are due for a busy semester and you've been enrolled in lots of modules, you might find that the dashboard can look slightly overwhelming because there's a huge amount of modules being presented to you. If you're having any difficulty in terms of identifying which modules are relevant for this coming semester and which are, maybe further down the line, maybe for modules you've been enrolled in for semester 2 of this academic year, what you can do is you can click into the modules item over here on the left-hand menu, and from here click on all modules at the top of this menu. Now, what this will do is it will demonstrate to you all of the modules you've been enrolled in. So that is broken up into all modules, the upper half, which is modules which are Canvas considers currently active, and past enrollments, which are modules from previous academic years. So you can see there for me, modules from 2018-19, 22, 23, so on and so forth. In this list, it will provide the name of the module, it will identify if you're enrolled as a student or a teacher, and it will also identify to you whether the module has been published or not. Now, for the purposes of our dashboard, what is a very useful feature is the ability to star modules like this. So, for example, if we go back to my dashboard, we can see that there's two modules, published modules there, these two. If we go back into all modules, essentially what this star or this favorite next to each module means is basically if I click the star for a particular module, what that will do is it will display these modules and only these modules on my dashboard. So I've clicked a couple of additional entries here. If we go back to the dashboard, we can see now that instead of just the two modules which were there, all of the modules which I've starred are now visible to me on my dashboard. So if you're looking for any module and you can't see it on your dashboard, you can very simply go into modules, all modules, and star the relevant modules which appear here. And it's a good habit to get into, maybe even at the start of each semester, to very simply go in here and make sure that you have only starred the modules that you want that will be active for you for the coming semester. So just limit any things which you star or favorite to ones which will be relevant for this current semester that we're in, so that when you go to your dashboard, you're only going to be presented with live active modules, basically just the modules that only the modules that you're going to be dealing with over the next 13 weeks. When you're happy with the dashboard, what you can do is you can very simply click into a module in order to access it. So if this is the global navigation menu over on the left-hand side here, which kind of lets us move around the Canvas system, the set of links here, home, unit, zoom, so on and so forth, that is the navigation menu specifically just for this module. So these are the different areas or tools for this module. And by clicking into each of these, I can move around. So something which might be useful as well, by default, there is a certain kind of template um, applied to all Canvas modules. So for example, you know, more sensitive information, like for example, the list of all people involved in the module, access to files or the outcomes or things like that, that is automatically hidden from students. But if you do identify that there is something which you would like to be available in this left-hand module navigation menu, something which you can do is you can very simply go into settings, go up to navigation, and basically anything which is above it or is in this list in the upper half of the page here is going to be visible to students. Anything which is in the lower half is going to be invisible to students. So looking at the list of links here, I want the assignments item to be visible to students so they can see the assignments I'm giving them. I might decide that I want students to use a discussion forum so that they can talk to each other. And I want students to be able to see their grades. And I don't know, for example, if I'm using the chat feature, I might want that available to students also. So when I'm happy with all of this, I can click Save at the bottom of the page, and that will update the navigation menu. And the way in which you can identify what is visible and invisible in the navigation menu, apart from going into this section, is if you look for that kind of icon, the eye with the line through it, over on the left-hand side. Anytime that icon is present, it indicates that menu items, navigation items, which have that icon, those are basically invisible. So those are not items which students will be able to see in the module. If I go down to save and I save our updated menu, you can see all of a sudden quite a few of that instances of that icon have disappeared. So I can see now a lot of these items are actually available to students. You might notice that units are, for example, assignments, even though they're visible in the navigation menu, they have that icon associated with it. But that's just because they're empty, because there are no units in there at the moment. It's appearing as invisible to students. We go in and we add a unit, or excuse me, publish a unit rather. We can see that the units item has now become available to students. Generally, there isn't really much of a need to go into settings and update the navigation menu, but if you do decide you want to use certain features and you want students to be able to see those features, you can adjust the navigation options here. By default, the home page for a particular unit, or excuse me, for a module, will be the units area. So the units area, essentially, how I tend to think of it is basically like a series of files and folders. You, on your machine, create a folder and you put relevant files into that folder. So it's a very similar process here. Units are like the folders within Canvas. They're basically a way of organizing content, and you can put specific items under specific units. So how I would tend, for example, to organize my modules every year is I'm going to click on the units area here, and then I'm going to click on the blue unit button here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this unit week 1. Now, obviously, you can categorize your content however you want. Some people don't like to go week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, etc. They might organize or kind of create units according to subject matter. So one unit might be, for example, for a module I teach, it might be pedagogical schools. Another one might be learning experience design. But what I think I found easiest for myself and easiest for students also is to simply categorize content week by week. So I'm going to create week 1 by clicking on Add Unit. And we can see here at the bottom of the page that that has created a unit called week 1. Now that that's been created, what I can do is I can simply click on the plus icon over here to the right of week 1, and that will give me this pop-up here. Now from this pop-up, what I can do is I can use the drop-down menu to select anything and everything that I want to add under this particular unit. So that can include files, pages, assignments, quizzes, external URLs, so on and so forth. The most common, I suppose, use of Canvas really is as a means of making files and resources available to students. So if I select file, I can see here under course files, this is any and every file that I've already uploaded into this unit. If I want to upload a new one, I simply select create file. That will give me this button, which I can use to pick a particular file. When I've selected the file from my machine, I can click add item, and we can see here that will add that file into under. So that is the process by which we can organize content in a Canvas module by adding units, for example, week 2, and then under each unit, if you want to, you can kind of click here to directly add a particular file, or else if you want to add something different, you can, for example, select the plus button across from the unit and upload a file or upload assignment, for example, upload an external URL. So now an important feature within Canvas is the ability to publish. There's two kind of levels of publishing really. There is the publishing of the overall unit and, or excuse me, the overall module, and there is the publishing of individual units. So basically when something is published within Canvas, what that means is that it's visible to students. If something is published, it's visible to students. If something is not published, it's invisible to students. By default, as we've seen on our dashboard, new modules in Canvas are going to be unpublished, which means they're not visible to students yet. The idea with between of this kind of published or unpublished state is very simply, if a module is unpublished, I have the ability to click into it to set up the module however I want, and then to only make it available to students once I'm happy with it. The way in which you know a module or the way in which you can publish or unpublish a module at large is by going to the home page of a module. And if you look over on the right-hand side, we can see that module status at the moment is set to published. If I set that to unpublished, what that now means is that the module is there, it's present, I can work away on it, but it is invisible to students. They're not going to see it on the dashboard. If I go into the unit section, a similar principle applies. So for example, we can see by virtue of this green tick icon that this unit is published, this content is published, this unit and this content is not published. So again, what that really means is that anything which is published is visible to students, anything which is unpublished is invisible to students. And you can have instances like this where an item under a unit is published, but the unit is unpublished. And what that means is basically because the unit is unpublished, that's not going to be seen by the student. A useful way of being able to identify whether what exactly students can and can't see is by very simply clicking on the View a Student button up in the top right corner here. And what that does is it basically logs me in as a student so I can see what the module is like from a student perspective. So we can see from the student perspective for this particular module, in most of the items are unpublished, only lecture and module information has been published. So that's all which students are going to see. If I want to leave the student view, I can click on the Leave Student View button in the bottom right corner. And I can see, and so you can see that even though there's quite a bit of content in the module, it is only the item, the unit and the items that are published that students can see. You can publish items by very simply clicking on the icon in question and identifying to publish the unit or publish all of the items. There is also, and you can simply click on these to publish and unpublish as you would like. There is also option at the top of the page to unpublish all units and items or publish all units and items. So very quickly, if we unpublish these and take a look at it from student perspective, it's going to show up as entirely empty. You can see even the units area has disappeared from the navigation. if we go back into units and publish all units and items, then we can see from student perspective, everything is visible to them. So the view as student is a particularly useful feature just in terms of being able to check from a student perspective what they can and can't see. If you've added files or some form of content to your module and students say that they can't see it, a good habit to get into is maybe going into the module, clicking view as students and seeing what shows up or what does not show up for you. And if something is not showing up for students, then more often than not, it's very simply because it hasn't been published yet. Another useful feature, just in terms of adding content to your Canvas module, is the ability to import content. So what this essentially refers to is the ability which you have if you're a teacher in a Canvas module to pull in content from other Canvas modules. Now, where this would be most relevant or most applicable or most useful is very simply if I've delivered a module in a previous year, chances are I'm going to be reusing quite a bit of the content from from the instance of this module I delivered last year for the coming year. So rather than having to upload all the same files, all the same assignments, all the same resources, what I can do is I can very simply click into settings, and over on the right-hand side, I can click on import module content. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the content type as copy a Canvas module. I'm going to search for the module name. So we'll look up a module that I've delivered previously. So we'll take, we'll take this one. From here, you can identify if you want to pull in all the content from that particular module or just specific content. So for the moment, we'll just select specific content. And when you're happy with all of that, you can click import. If you've selected that you just want to bring in specific content, what you need to do next is you need to click on the blue button, select content over here, and that will let me know, okay, from the module you've identified, what unit content do you want to bring in, what assignments do you want to bring in, so on and so forth. So I might say, well, I want to bring in the introduction, the first 3 weeks, I want to bring in this first assignment, so on and so forth. And when I hit select content, what that will do is it will queue that up, and if we come back to this at a later time, then the units area will be filled with all of the relevant content from that module that I delivered last semester. While that is happening, I might just very briefly mention the use of assignments and setting up assignments in Canvas. So assignments are basically kind of like a virtual pigeonhole for between yourself and students. An assignment in Canvas is basically a way for students to upload their work and for you to be able to view it, to be able to annotate it, to be able to give students marks and feedback all through the Canvas system. The way in which you can access the assignments within your module is by clicking on the assignments item over on the left-hand side and clicking on the blue assignment button up here. With any assignment, we give it a title, so we call this assignment 1 example. And we can also add in some content here. So for example, a useful thing to add here is the brief. Now you'll see this list of tools, which is available to you in what's called the rich content editor in Canvas. So anywhere you kind of have to put in text, anywhere you see this is basically you have access to a number of rich content editor tools. You can change the formatting of the text that you're entering in, but a really useful feature actually is the document upload feature here. You can add links, you can add images, you can add media, so on and so forth. Very useful feature though is the ability to add documents. So why this might be useful is I might pick on the option here. I can upload a document, or maybe if it's a document that I've already added to this module, I can do that. I'm just going to click module documents. I'm going to take the file that I uploaded earlier. And when I click on that, you'll see what that does is it puts in basically a link to the document in question. So where this is particularly useful is the ability to add in the brief for the assessment directly in, so that from a student perspective, when they access it, they can get right at the brief. I'll demonstrate that, excuse me, in more detail in a little bit. Um, Generally, I would recommend leaving points to simply be out of 100. I found it is generally just the easiest way, excuse me, to be able to give students marks and feedback is to mark everything out of 100. And the Canvas system just cooperates better with me when I mark everything out of 100, even if it's only worth 20% of the overall module mark. You don't have to worry about the assignment group. You don't have to worry about display grades, as generally those are fine by default. The submission type is the really important element here. So by default, the submission type might be set to no submission or it might be set to online. The option which is most straightforward, the most simple for both students, but also for you as a staff member, I would say is to select online and to select file upload. What this is basically communicating to Canvas is that for this assessment, I just want students to upload a file, a Word document or a PDF or a PowerPoint, for example, that I will then be able to look at, annotate, and give marks and feedback for. So there's a couple of different options: text entry, website URL, media recording, student annotation, which is where you can give students a document and allow them to annotate it themselves. Um, but for the most part, online and file upload is the most straightforward and the least complicated uh, structure or kind of type of assessment. Submission types, generally, we would recommend leaving as unlimited. If you set this to limited, it means that, for example, a student can upload no more than 3 times to this particular assessment. The only difficulty with limited really is if you set this to 1 and a student uploads, for example, the wrong PDF, that means after they've had their one attempt, they can't upload it again to the same space. So they have to email it to you or they have to try and give it to you in the corridor or so on and so forth. So generally, to make life easier for yourself, we simply suggest selecting submission types as unlimited attempts. Now, an additional feature which is available is if you have selected file upload or text entry, an additional item which will appear in this assessment space is plagiarism review. What this, if you want, if you're not interested in a plagiarism review, you can leave this as none. But if you would like for Canvas and kind of turn it in essentially to kind of check student submissions to see if there is any instances of potential plagiarism. What you can do is you can select the plagiarism review option to be turn it in being the main tool. Original appears in this list for the time being, just while we're moving away from it, but turn it in is the main tool that should be used for plagiarism review. And within this space, then you have a number of options in terms of plagiarism detection features for Turnitin. I'm not going to get into that here simply because there isn't enough time and we're running additional training sessions related, dedicated specifically to Turnitin. So if you'd like to know more about that, you can come along to one of those. But we leave the Turnitin feature selected for the moment. You generally don't have to worry about group assignments and peer reviews. Something you do, which is worth paying some attention to, is assign access. So assign access, this area here, basically determine when, who you want to submit to the assignment, when you want it done by, and if you want the assignment to become unavailable before and after a certain date. Generally assigned to is to it simply means that everyone who is enrolled in this module should submit against this particular assignment. A due date is basically the deadline by what you want this students to complete this assignment. So the due date is very simply the deadline that this should be done by. What happens if a student submits after the due date is that this Canvas will accept their assignment, but it will highlight to you or identify to you this student submitted after the deadline. So for this, we're going to set the deadline to, for example, the 5th of, we'll say the 6th of October. By default, Canvas will always give the time as a minute to midnight. That basically means they have all of the 6th of October to submit or to upload their assignment. Available from and until basically determines if Canvas should hide the assessment in question from students until after a certain date has passed, and then after the until date has passed, it becomes completely invisible. If I leave these blank, it very simply means that students will be able to see the assessment immediately and then they'll be able to submit against it. If I set the available from time to, let's say, the 23rd of September and the until date until the 14th of October, what this now means is that this assignment will only be visible to students after this date and time, and after the 14th of October, it will become invisible to students again. Generally, we recommend that you leave these blank for the simple reason that it can be very confusing to students if items in the module are appearing and disappearing. The main thing that you need to do in terms of signing access is really just the due date. The due date is the deadline. You want students to be able to submit after the deadline. Um, so generally we would recommend that you simply assign to everyone and you leave the due date and time as is. It might be the case that some students may have accommodations, so they might be allowed to submit a little bit later. If that is the case, what you can do is you can click on the Assign To button down here, and from here you can select an individual student. So I'm going to add a name here, and for the students, they don't have to submit on the 6th. I'm giving them an extra week so they can submit on the 13th. And you can see here now what this means is that this particular student gets to submit on the 13th and everyone else has to submit by the 6th. So that is the process through which you can facilitate accommodation for students who might need some additional extra time. If I'm happy with all of that, I can hit save and publish. And if I go into view a student, what that process looks like from a student point of view is they click start assignment. They can click on the document that we uploaded if they want to access the full brief for the assignment, which is a very useful feature. And when they're ready to, they can click on upload file. They can pick the file that they want to upload. They can, if they want to, they can add some comments in here. They can also click on this. They also have to click, if I've added a plagiarism review function, they need to click on the checkbox here to be able to submit the assignment. This is basically just a way of getting students to agree to the end user license and to kind of essentially state that the assessment submission is their own original work. They hit submit assignment, excuse me, and if they don't tick that box, you can see there that pop-up comes up to stop them from submitting. When they're happy with that, they can click submit assignment. And what that does is it identifies to them that the assignment has been submitted. If I want to review their work as an instructor, what I can do is I can simply come into the assignment in question. And from here, I'm going to click on Speed Grader over in the top right corner. Speed Grader is Canvas's feedback and marking tool. And what this allows me to do is when I click into Speed Grader, I can move through the different students in the module and what each student has submitted using the drop down in the top right or the arrows up in the top right. And what I can do then is the content in question will be displayed on the left hand side. I can use any of the annotation tools over the top area here to add in specific feedback for specific items. I can add more general feedback for the students here. So something like, overall, good work, watch out for XYZ. And I can also add a grade in here for the student. So for example, 66 out of 100. You'll also see here, if you have selected the turn it in option, that uh, there is a percentage score associated with this particular piece. What that is the similarity score. It kind of indicates levels or percentage of potential plagiarism. If you want to access that, you can simply, or if you want to, excuse me, access more detailed feedback from Turnitin on what could or may not be plagiarized material, you can simply click on that and that will open up in a new window the similarity report. When you're happy with all of that, you can very simply hit submit and that will add the marks and feedback for the student. It might come up, it's just something to keep an eye on, that it might come up when you create a fresh assignment that there is in the assignment, you might see this again, the familiar kind of eye icon with the line through it up in the top right corner. What this means is it's simply another kind of form of publishing in Canvas. What this will do is it means that you can add marks, you can add feedback to the student's work. Students won't be able to see the results of the marks and feedback until you click on this item up here and hit post grades. And the logic behind that is very simply that what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to go in, I want to be able to add all of the students' marks and feedback. And then once everyone has been given their marks and feedback inside the speed grader, then and only then do I want to be able to come up here, hit post grades, and then hit post so that everybody gets their marks and their feedback together at the same time. If we go back into the home area, we can see that or into the units area, we can see that content from the module that I imported earlier has all kind of come in. So again, that's just a very useful way of making sure that you have all of your mark, but that you can pull in content from previous instances of this module and reuse those quite quickly and easily. So I appreciate that that was a real kind of whistle-stop tour in terms of Canvas. The final thing that I'd just like to mention then is the use of Zoom. So the way in which you can create Zoom meetings for students is again through Canvas, clicking on the Zoom item over in the left-hand side. Once we click into the Zoom item, what we can very simply do from this space is view any upcoming meetings, look at previous meetings we had, look at recordings of sessions, so on and so forth. But the most straightforward process here is simply click into Zoom, click on schedule a new meeting. From here, you can give the Zoom session a name, a description. You can set a date and a time. So we might say next Monday at 7 p.m. If you know this is going to be a session, which is we're going to leave it as an hour because it's going to happen from 7 to 8. And if you feel that if this is going to be a meeting that is going to be happening regularly, you can simply click recurring meeting and identify that this is going to happen every week on every Monday after, you say, for example, 13 occurrences, after 13 weeks, it's going to stop. And what that means is basically every Monday, a Zoom session will be set up for the same time, the same duration, so on and so forth. Under only authenticated users can join meetings. Generally, it's fine to leave this as only MTU Cork students or staff. If you had, for example, a guest speaker coming in, they're not going to have MTU authentications. So you might want to set this to all authenticated users. And all that really means for the guest speaker is they just have to be logged into some form of a Zoom account to be able to join that session. When we're happy with all of this, there's some additional options here in terms of reassigning breakout rooms or recording the meeting automatically. But when I hit save, that meeting has been created. And if I go back into the Zoom space, which students will also be able to see, we can see that there is a Zoom session due to happen on Monday, the 23rd of September at 7 p.m. When I want to start that Zoom session, I can simply hit the start button and that will open up Zoom. As we're delivering this training session within Zoom, I can't exactly break out. I can't exactly show the Zoom interface while in Zoom. But if you go to telhelp.eu.helpdocsite.com, there's a number of help articles there on how to use the Zoom interface. The main thing really is making sure that you have the right microphone and speaker selected so the students can see you, being able to share your screen and being able to manage students coming in and out of the room. So it's not that complicated. If you want to log into the Zoom system or you're not sure what to do, you can go to telcit.zoom.us, and if you click the sign in option there, it will ask you to log in using the same credentials and process that you use to access your MTU emails and also your access to Canvas. So in terms of supports within Canvas, then there is 24/7 support available for all MTU staff and students using Canvas. The way in which you can access this is if you click into Canvas, click on the help icon over in the bottom left corner. You can click on that, and from there, the option that we would recommend is web chat with Canvas support. What that will do is it will very simply put you in touch through web chat with a Canvas agent. You put in your details, thing that you're having a difficulty with, identifying that you're faculty, and then the perceived severity of the issue at hand. So if you're having any difficulties with anything at all in Canvas, the first port of call, which we'd recommend, is clicking on the help item and web chatting with a Canvas support agent. And as I mentioned, those are Canvas support agents, so they know the system inside out and should be able to help you with that. And additional elements, just in terms of obviously some elements are going to be related to Canvas. Okay, they should be Canvas support agents who you should be talking to. But obviously, there's some issues which are going to be kind of specific or local to MTU. So if you're having what we would call MTU specific issues, by which I mean you're not enrolled in the module you should be on, or you simply can't get into your Canvas account because the system has no record of you, we would recommend emailing service desk at mtu.ie, and they'll be able to help you with those. If there is a TEL related issue, so for example, cross listing, or you're trying to do something in Zoom but are not able to, you can email us in the Department of TEL at edtech at mtu.ie. We also have a number of resources available, all of which are kind of contained on our website, tel.cit.ie. So if you're having any difficulties with anything, you can simply visit our website at tel.cit.ie. And there's a number of resources available, in particular staff resources. And from here, you can access our YouTube channel where we have recordings of all of the training sessions we've delivered. Also, the help docs and articles is this kind of knowledge base where we've created help articles on pretty much everything that spoken about in this session, but additional tools also in terms of remote teaching, H5P, the use of ScreenPal, tips and tricks, VVox, so on and so forth. So if anyone has any questions, either here with me in Zoom or alternatively, if you're watching along on YouTube, Zoom participants, please feel free to put them into the Q&A, and YouTube participants, please feel free to put them into the live chat. We'll just shut up for a moment so people have a chance to ask any questions they may wish. Okay, so I'm going to take that as a sign that there are no questions and that everybody is relatively happy with what we've covered. So yeah, as I mentioned, tel.cit.ie is kind of the hub where you can access all the various resources that we have available. And you can follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn should you like. As I mentioned, we'll be doing additional training, particularly around Turnitin over the next 2 weeks. So if you would like to know more about the new plagiarism detection solution, please feel free to register for that. Again, you can register for that on our website under upcoming training, where all of the training sessions that we'll be delivering are listed. Otherwise, all that's left to say is thank you so much, everyone, for coming along and for your time and attention. And look forward to hopefully seeing you during the semester. Very best of luck to everyone over the coming weeks. So thanks very much, everyone. And